Hello and welcome to another episode of Steelfur Speaks with, of course, me, Steelfur, London-based Flesh and Blood player. Been doing a lot of videos recently. In my last video, the decks you would expect to see in the top 8, which you can see linked below, I disrespected, shall we say, several heroes that have made top 8s, including Azalea, Kano, and Levia. I have since been told Levia has done better than top 8 and gone into top 4, which I am shocked by, but equally congratulations to the Levia player who did that. And he is, he's told me that I owe him a beer, which I'll take that. If we ever meet in person, I'll give you a beer. That's fine. Um, so I guess the question is to return to the headline of this article. Have we misunderstood Levia all along? And how do we feel about that? So I'm going to say no. My initial impressions, I've played a few games with Levia. The reason I didn't like her to begin with is that there are lots of additional costs to do her abilities, which I don't think really makes sense. But we're going to take this deck that's in this Wraith Times Levia article, which I think is a great article, and he's also got some stuff on the pro side, which has like sideboard guides and things like that. And maybe other people are having more luck with this deck than I am, but I've played a few games with it now, and I feel like all the problems that you would expect from Levia are just manifest in this deck as much as they are manifest anywhere, which is that she is liable to kill herself. She has costs that are very difficult to pay consistently, and sometimes due to those costs, you will not have a very good hand. You will have things you cannot do, or you will die to your own blood debt. So that's still my conclusion with Levia, but I have this video for you guys here talking through this deck. I have the RTN top 4 deck we're going to look at and talk about why these two differ. And I've got some gameplay footage that we're going to flick through from some games I played into Viserai a couple of days ago with this deck. And we're going to point out certain moments that really sort of frustrated me and why I think that makes it feel bad as a person playing this hero. And is in fact just a miss on design and a miss on power. One of the reasons why Levia keeps suffering. So let's start off, just have a bit of a look at this deck. I think it's fairly straightforward. I like the use of Hexagore, which is something I always really wanted to work. That's whenever you attack with it, it's 2 for 6, but it deals you 6 minus the number of blood deck cards in your banish zone. So early game it hurts, late game it doesn't. But if you can turn off blood deck with Levia, you can swing with this for 2 every turn. Scabskin Leathers, which the guide tells you to roll fairly often, unless it's late game and you haven't got your Gambler's Gloves anymore. Ebon Fold, just to stop yourself from dying. Some Null Rune to deal with Viserai. And the Skullhorn to draw some cards if it's needed, but most of the time I think you're going to run Ebon Fold. Boneyard Marauders, Command and Conquers, Dread Screamers for Go Again, Endless Maws, Defense Reactions, Ghostly Visit so that you can banish it and play it again. There's a 1 for 4, which is quite nice. The Slaughter Beast is a 2 for 7, which is good. Plunder Runs to get more aggression. Shadow Puppetry to get Go Again. Sink Below's, Tome of Torments for a bit of card draw. Art of War, Deep Rooted Evils. So you can play that as well. Hungry Slaughter Beast, Mark of the Beast. I mean, all of these are Levia cards. If you've seen Levia before, you'll know what they do. Mostly just try to get as much blue as possible. That also has 6 damage, coupled with as much red as possible to deal damage. So let's go into the gameplay footage, because I think that's going to be very interesting. Let me just bring this up. So here we go. So you'll see I'm playing Levia into Viserai against one of my mates, who I won't necessarily name and shame, though he does play Viserai very well in this. Opening hand, Deep Rooted Evil, Endless Maw, Command and Conquer. He comes in with a Dread Triptych, and I block, which is great, so I'm filling my graveyard. Yeah. Note that I am filling my graveyard when he blocks, which will become relevant in the second matchup we play, where he doesn't attack on turn 1, and I don't get to fill my graveyard. So if we skip ahead, so I block, that's fine. We skip ahead onto turn 2. So I've got 4 cards in my graveyard. I have 2 6-cost attacks in there. One of them is Deep Rooted Evil. Sorry. This turn, I'm just going to play Deep Rooted Evil because there's no way to really make the other things line up. I don't have enough 6 cost for Tear Limb from Limb. I don't want to burn my graveyard to a Convulsions just to do a 7 strength Dominate on turn 2. That doesn't feel very good. So what I'm going to do is just play out the Deep-Rooted Evil. You'll see here in a second. So I chuck that out. He takes some damage. And then the next turn, and he makes 6 rune chants. You know, I'm skipping over his turns because he just makes a lot of rune chants. My next turn, I play Convulsions with the hope of banishing the Deep-Rooted Evil, because that will let me play it. I roll Scabskins, but I get a 3. That's, you know, not important. That happens a lot. It's kind of indicative of the problems in the matchup.
It's better than nothing.
Basically, I play Convulsions, and I only banish the 3 cards that aren't Deep-Rooted Evil, basically. So I can't play Deep-Rooted Evil.
Action, so
I have a Tail Limb from Limb. I have a Hungry Slaughterbeast. I now can't play Levia, because I don't have enough 6 strength in my graveyard. I wanted to get Convulsions out of my graveyard, so I could out of my arsenal, so I could put Plunder Run in there. But now my only option is to pitch a card to play Tail Limb from Limb, right? So that I can potentially,
I just needed to get it in my
have a way to play my attack. So I mistakenly pitched that first. Then I come to my senses. I pitch Plunder Run, hoping to draw a card that will let me basically get something out of Tail Limb from Limb. But really, at this point, I should have just cut my losses. I should have just arsenaled Plunder Run and just gone to the next turn and just let the Convulsions of Bellows happen without doing anything. But that's a dead turn with 0 aggression put on, unless I want to swing with Hexagon, which really doesn't feel good. So you'll see I drew a Sink Below. I then have to discard a card at random. I discard the Hungry Slaughterbeast. So
anyway, that triggers, but I've got nothing to do with it,
on,
so I'm just going to pass my turn.
I arsenal a Sink Below, which is never going to be useful. One thing I will say is that the advice for sideboarding against Viserai with this deck, which came, was sideboard out red attacks for defense reactions and blues, which I kind of completely disagree with, because you don't need defense reactions versus Viserai. You need to smack them hard enough that when they hit you, you're already decently ahead, right? But this is a slightly better turn, because I've got Hungry Slaughterbeast, I've got Mark of the Beast, I've got an Art of War. I'm never going to use this defense reaction. He just Sonatas me for a bit of damage, and then comes in, you know, and comes in with quite a lot of Druid chance, quite a lot of damage. Arsenals a bit. And that's kind of fine with me. Like, he didn't want to attack, he didn't want to blow up his rune chance. So I Shadow Puppetry into a Hungry Slaughterbeast.
Coming in,
and I pitch. That lets me get out my 4 cards. So hopefully I get the Deep-Rooted Evil this time, because that's kind of what I want to play. And I do, which is good.
Okay.
First bit of luck. Those get banished. So I have that 1 Blood Debt in the banish zone.
And then
he blocks, he takes 1. I can then look at the top card of my deck, but I don't have the resources to pay for it. So,
that's a shame.
You know, what we're going to do. And one of the things that does also cause me friction about Levia is, unlike Chain, where your banish zone has a lot of utility and that you can play
top card
stuff there.
Choose if I want to banish I don't.
You know, Levia doesn't. You're just adding stuff there that basically just doesn't do anything for you. It doesn't give you extra hand slots. It doesn't give you extra reach. It just creates a liability for you. So it's kind of like a bit of a risk. Anyway, I'm going to pitch the Art of War, I think, to pay for the... I don't have enough to pay for the Deep-Rooted Evil, which is a nuisance.
Already been dealt with.
So at the moment, I'm kind of wishing that I had my Arsenal slot and that I hadn't put a Sink Below in there. But... I did, and I'm regretting it now. So the turns late game do start to get a bit better.
Select Go Again and draw.
I can pitch my Art of War. I can banish something. Sorry, I'm just going to sneeze.
Beast. Draw 2. Then I've got Go Again, so let's...
Most beautiful images and screen grabs for anyone who wants to do that in chat. Doesn't really bother me. People got to sneeze. So I banished the Mark of the Beast, which in retrospect was a mistake because I didn't have the resources then to play
let's get
Command and Conquer.
Beast.
But the point is kind of still fair that, you know,
banish these 3 cards.
I drew 2 cards. I thought I was getting
Yeah,
rid of the
there's some
right
blood
thing so I could
there.
play Hungry Slaughter Beast and Command and Conquer, because they are both better than
Yeah.
Mark of the Beast.
Yeah.
But essentially just didn't get anything to do with the go again. And that cost me 2, so then I...
Wow.
Yeah. Essentially just ended up passing. But, like, so... You know, there have definitely been a few times when you can see I've made a few mistakes in this game, but the deck is not making it easy. And that's the distinction between, like, a well-built, like, I mean, obviously I'm a Katsu fanboy, but a well-built Katsu deck makes it easy to choose the appropriate plays. With this deck, it feels like there is, like, maybe one right play if you draw your hand properly.
Okay.
And even then, you're not getting anything by way of actual pressure. Like, at this point in the game, we're on turn 3, 4, and I have successfully attacked for, I want to say, like, 21 damage in 3 attacks. Like, it's just not really there. And, you know, you're kind of sitting there with this deck being like, where is the pressure coming from? Anyway, so this game went on for a bit longer. I don't really want to focus on it too much. I did have a few aggressive hands. You can see I got him to 27. He piles on the rune chance, comes in with massive amounts of damage, you know, and I die, basically. Because he takes all the cards from my hand, and then I die to blood debt. So we go into game 2, and I'm just like, no, this is ridiculous. Why am I playing... why am I playing no Gambler's Gloves? I definitely want those. And we go into game 2. I take out more defense reactions. I put in more red attacks. I basically go in with the aim of, let's just try and smash him nice and fast. He does an attack on turn 1. He does get a god draw, I should point out, of Become the Arknight, Mordred Tide, Become the Arknight, Mordred Tide into a Read the Runes. Sorry, just one Mordred Tide, but into Read the Runes, and gets 9 rune chance.
Makes sense.
I have a bit of fun. Roll with Scabskins, nothing works. I chuck out an energy potion. I arsenal the Scabskins. Sorry, I arsenal the Shadow Puppetry, which I think is the right decision. Yeah. I know I said I want to pour on the gas. Maybe I should have taken out the energy potions, but the fact is that I need those to smooth out the turns, because it looks like this deck has a lot of resource problems as well. So I was going to roll Scabskins, and then I realized I had the Shadow Puppetry. So I was like, why don't I just Shadow Puppetry into a Deep-Rooted Evil? That seems good. Just come in straight for 6. I can't play the Boneyard Marauder. I don't have enough cards in my graveyard. But I will pop the Energy Potion to play Command and Conquer, basically.
Yeah, I'll banish
which will be a nice, strong attack. I'm banishing the Energy Potion because I kind of realized I don't want it next turn.
Command and Conquer.
But I blow up that Energy Potion to play Command and Conquer for 6 and take a decent chunk of damage from him, right?
I put it back in.
Yeah. He plays Runeblood Barrier, gets some more resources. I can actually successfully come in, but he just fully blocks because that's what Viscerai will do. I don't think I've banished anything this turn, so I take 1 Blood Debt. He just gains some more rune chance. We're on turn 3, and he's got like 23 of them, 24 of them.
Again.
I mean, it's a little bit better, but I roll the Scabskins. I get 6, which is nice, but
Deep-Rooted Evil, pitching.
I'm not really sure of where we are now. And then I make a misplay because I'm actually not able to play Deep-Rooted Evil.
And the combat chain.
Because I haven't banished something with 6 or more strength. I needed to play the Boneyard Marauder first.
Different Deep-Rooted Evil.
But that's fine, because I think I play the Boneyard Marauder, and I have
banish these
only got 3 cards. Okay, so that's a pretty big misplay. But you know, you can already see that the clunkiness of the deck means that I would not have been able to play either of my Boneyard Marauders.
And then nothing.
I would have had to play my Deep-Rooted Evil, pitching the other 3 cards in my hand.
Floating.
And that would have been my turn, right? I wouldn't have had another option. At this point, I just decided to take some damage from Hexagore and just swing in.
Okay.
Because you can see how... So, I misplayed there, but you can see even if I hadn't, how awkward that turn would have been. Because I wouldn't have been able to actually do anything except play the Deep-Rooted Evil, take 2 damage from Blood Debt, and I still would not have done more than 6 damage, right? Even with a triple Scabskin roll, I would have only been able to do 2 damage. So, you know, where does this deck actually get its aggression from? It's all awkward costs and weird capabilities, right?
No.
So we continue skipping in. Obviously, we have the massive Sonata turn that basically just destroys me. Kind of what you'd expect. I survive it, but we kind of just let it go.
The opponent has a full hand.
We move on to game 3.
Not great.
Now, game 3 is interesting because it goes on for a bit longer. There's a lot more trading. I do actually get off like Plunder Run into a fairly big attack. He blocks it up because he's happy to not let me draw a card. Even though I don't have Go Again. At this point, I'm like, do I have 6 cards in my graveyard for Soul Harvest? I don't. It's another really awkward cost that you have to pay. Whereas like Soul Reaping just lets you have Go Again. But I will get off, I think, a fairly decent turn where I take some damage from a Dread Triptych in order to
Shadow Puppetry.
Throw in a Shadow Puppetry, Command and Conquer.
Arsenal.
And then Arsenal pass because I had double Shadow Puppetry. Yeah, I'm kind of just skipping over the Viserai player's turn just based on...
Cool, so 6 with Go Again.
So I pitched my Art of War to play a Dread Screamer, which gets Go Again. That's good. And that means that I can play a Boneyard Marauder and banish the other 3 cards. So now we're finally getting some sort of steam or speed going here. But, you know, I've got a Howl from Beyond. I've got some resources. The Viserai player is almost about to pop off. But,
give my next attack.
At least I have a bit of wiggle room. I play Art of War. I banish. Blood. Ghostly Visit. And then I've got my Doomsday, and I'm sitting here thinking, if I use Even Fold, I can play my Doomsday, which would be pretty good. So... Okay. I do. Well, I play Boneyard Marauder, right?
So let's go Boneyard Marauder. Pitching a...
I play a Boneyard Marauder.
Banishing these 3
Banishing
cards.
3 cards, one of which is a 6 cost. Blood Debt, so I've got 2 more Blood Debt, takes me up to 7. And then I can actually play Doomsday, which is very good. I don't have an Ursa there, so I get out Blasphemet. And swing in. And at this point, obviously, I'm losing the clock to Viserai because he's on 25. And I'm nowhere near capable of blocking that much damage with the blues and the reds of the deck. But, you know, I have at least dealt him a decent chunk of damage, and having Blasphemet out is quite good.
A Deep-Rooted Evil.
So you'll see I ebb and fold away a Deep-Rooted Evil, just hoping to get... Well, basically to stop myself dying from Blood Debt, which I think you just kind of have to do.
Perfect.
And then I come in with a Dread Screamer, because I have the graveyard for it.
Oh, I should have 1 resource floating.
Yeah. I Howl from Beyond into Dread Screamer with 1 floating, which I put into a
6 cost here, so this gets Go Again. So I'm coming in for 9 with Go Again.
Okay. And that's it, really. I mean, he's on 13 rune chance. I've dealt him a decent bit of damage. Blasphemet coming out helped immensely, but that's a 1 per deck card.
7 is 20.
And then he just comes in with all of his rune charts, 2 E strikes, Command and Conquer, Rouse the Ancients from Sonata
You're kind of
Arcanix,
sitting in a
he
game
just
where
goes in with aggression, right? You know, it's a pretty good turn. Then we gear up for a Katsu game, which obviously I'm a lot more comfortable with, but we won't go into that now. Let's go back to this article. So, talking about this article, things that didn't work for me, right? Boneyard Marauder. I really didn't like Convulsions from the Bellows of Hell. It felt like I was banishing cards from my graveyard for an inferior effect, and it was just there for a blue. Tail End from Limb, I really didn't like. Unworldly Bellow, I really didn't like. That was, you know, banish 3 random cards from your graveyard. Why am I banishing cards from my graveyard for anything except a Marauder or a Dread Screamer or an Endless Maw or a Hungering Slaughter Beast? Why am I banishing cards from my graveyard for anything except one of these? Is it just so I have another option so Levia doesn't kill me? That seems like a bad reason. So, yeah. I'm not sure about this deck. I mean, if I kept playing it, maybe I would get better with it. But ultimately, it feels like the costs never line up properly. It feels like there's always some additional cost to pay that just isn't comfortable. And it feels like Levia is just badly designed. I'm sorry, like, I have so much love for all of the heroes in this game, but it really feels like Levia is just like she needs something that lets her stack her graveyard. So maybe an equipment that just says destroy this card to take the top 5 cards of your deck and put them into your graveyard, or 6 cards maybe, just so she can make those costs. You'll see in one of those games against Viserai, I couldn't play my entire hand on turn 1 because everything said banish 3 cards and I had no graveyard. Now, if Levia had an equipment that said something like, at the start of the game, take the top 6 cards of your deck and put them in your graveyard, instantly you've got fuel for all of those cards and you can keep ahead of them. And then suddenly it makes sense to run something like Convulsions or run something like Otherworldly Bellow, because you can, if you're playing 2 to 3 cards a turn, keep up with that once you get a head start. I would really like to see something like that for Levia, where you just take X number of cards from the top of your deck and flip it over. And if we get a set that has extra cards for Shadowbrew, I think that would be worth it. So now let's turn from that deck, which I wasn't that impressed by, to a slightly different deck, which is what won a Road to Nationals. Sorry, I'm just going to bring up... You can see all the secret decks that I'm working on. Matt Rogers Chain. Everyone has Matt Rogers Chain. So I've got the first deck here, and then I've got the second deck, which is including the changes that he made, or has said he would make after it. So instantly, if we look at the number of cards, right, because I prefer this list, instantly we look at the number of cards that banish from the graveyard. Right, that can only be played if you've banished. This banishes 3 or more. So we've got 1, 2, 3. We've got 4, 5, 6, 7. I mean, these blues really feel like they're just there to be blues. There's still quite a few cards that banish from the graveyard, but there's a lot more of these powerful attacks and a few less of the actual blues. Also, it leans more heavily into things like Beast from Within and Bloodrush Bellows. Beast from Within can save you from Levia, so it can be quite interesting. If you just can discard it or something like that, it can be very good. Getting you another card. Arg Smash for the dash matchup. Pummel is obviously really great. Pulping, I think, is very good as well. Not sure about Life for a Life and Nourishing Emptiness, but neither was the guy who made this list. So this list leads a lot heavier into non-Levia attacks, and less trying to game the discard pile with stuff like Deep-Rooted Evil. I really dislike Deep-Rooted Evil after playing with it. The fact that you could only play it when you banish something from your graveyard, or when you banish a 6 or more cost attack, and it's overcosted for costing 3, means that you never really get to use it. Deep-Rooted Evil would have been fine if it didn't have that additional cost, if it just said, pitch 3, swing for 6 from your banish zone, right? And then if you can banish it again, you can swing again. It's hard enough to banish it twice. You don't need that extra. You have to have banished something already this turn to play this card. If it costs 2, maybe. If it costs 1, 100% that characterization would be important. But as a 3-cost attack, it doesn't need that It doesn't need that extra leap. The Eye of Ophidia, of course, amazing card. So I haven't tried this deck yet. I just want to point out some of the changes that the guy has recommended on Facebook. So putting Barraging Beatdown in just to help you race Chain a bit more feels really good. Taking out an Arg Smash, replacing it with something else. Taking out some Unworldly Bellows as well. What was the other recommendations that he made? Let's have a look. So you want to take out Nourishing Emptiness, grand. Otherworldly Bellow, because it's strictly worse than Boneyard Marauder. Okay, seems fair. So you'd also take out 3 Boneyard Marauders. Sorry. Let's make this change live because it doesn't look like I did it earlier. So Otherworldly Bellow comes out. Boneyard Marauder goes in because it's a 1-for-4 attack. But if you have to play it, you can. Seems better. Another Reckless Swing. Another Ghostly Visit. Seems good. Is that 80 cards? 77. Okay. I will have to figure out what else is missing from this. But essentially, his feedback after these games were that he actually felt like his games versus Chain were quite favorable because he could essentially lay a beatdown on them. And I can see how that would work because Chain is constantly attacking. Whereas if you come up against someone like Viserai who isn't constantly attacking, you don't get the same ability to fill your graveyard. And I think that's a fairly big deal. So there we go. Here's the Levia deck I would recommend trying. I think this is a good article. I think this has a lot of interesting takes of play and lines of play with Levia, but I think it's trying very hard to be use her ability a lot, when I think Levia's strength is going to come from her ability to lay on a beatdown with some cheap aggressive attacks and I would say a lot more go again than Rhinar could easily put on the table. So, you know, by bringing that go again to the table, you can put out a stronger late game and early game field. So I think that's quite interesting. And I think Levia is still, you know, I'm not revising what I said about Levia in the previous video. I think Levia is poorly designed. She's missing something to shine, whether it's an equipment that discards 10 cards from your deck or something like that, I don't know, but it's something sufficient that it's completely crippling the class. And when we get the Crucible equivalent for Monarch and Aria, hopefully Levia will get that something that elevates her a bit, because at the moment she doesn't have the reach. She's missing a head that just discards some cards from the top of the deck, or some gloves that discard the cards from the top of the deck, or something, you know. So we'll see. If she gets better, we can come back to this video. I still maintain you should not expect to see that much Levia in the top 8 of your Road to Nationals. I think you are safe to not tech against Levia. If you run into one and you lose, I'm very sorry, but statistically not very likely. The way to beat Levia seems to be she doesn't have a lot of on-hit effects. Just smash her and, you know, beat her faster than she can beat you, and hope she rolls bad on her Scabskins. Then if that happens, you'll win. So, yeah, that's it, really. Don't worry too much about this matchup, but be aware that it does exist, which is the purpose of this video.